welcome everyone to this episode of Breakpoint. We have with us today Abhay Bhargav, who's the founder of V45 and AppSec engineer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Okay, so now we'll start off with the rapid fire questions for this episode.
Okay, I'm bracing.
Yeah. So the first thing was, and I was going through your profile, I saw that you have passed out from Bangalore University.
Yes.
Which was your favorite hangout place here?
Okay. The weird thing about my stint in Bangalore University was that I never actually went to college for the most part. I used to be involved in a lot of cultural things or sports. So I used to mostly be at some restaurant or the other. I think we used to go to Cunningham Road quite a lot. We used to stay. There was this coffee day in Cunningham Road. And I think I've stayed there once for like 8.5 hours straight, I think.
Talking of hanging out.
Literally hanging out. So yeah, I think that would probably be my most favorite hangout spot.
Okay. Did you ever notice anything interesting, like particularly in terms of reactions, whether funny reactions or anything unexpected from developers or other teams when they first realize the impact of policy as code on their workflows?
Funny reactions. So developers tend to react either. So I've seen developers react in two or three different ways. One set of developers are like, what is the big deal? I mean, I can build this in a weekend, right? So a lot of developers take that line. The other set of developers are, what is the use of us now? We don't really need to do anything much. So that is also there. And I think that's a very similar reaction that some developers have to things like ChatGPT as well. They're like, hey, what are we doing here? Why do we exist? But I think most developers have a very positive reaction to any new tech, in my opinion, and I've seen that when I speak to them, because they like new things. They like shiny things. And policy as code is one of those shiny new things. So the promise of it is good, but unfortunately, if the company does not market it well, it ends up being a disaster.
Yeah. Okay, what makes DevSecOps fun for you?
Automation is something that I'm generally a lazy guy, so automation has always been a calling for me for forever. I've always enjoyed. The reason I even got into DevSecOps was because I wanted to automate a lot of pen testing away. I was always a very reluctant pen tester. So for me, it was largely about, let my tools run and let me get results and then deal with the problem. So a lot of it really stemmed from that. So automation, I consider myself pretty good at automation only because I consider myself extremely lazy, and that's what makes it. Because I don't have to do anything much, and that's the benefit of DevSecOps, especially as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, cool. So now something a little more personal. If you were not doing security, we have always seen and heard you doing, talking about DevSecOps, talking about security all the time. If you're not doing security, what else would you be doing for a living?
There are 2-3 options. There was at one point in time, I wanted to write fiction. I was writing fiction. I actually wrote a play and I wrote a short story that got selected by the Hindu and all that stuff at one point in time. So I think I would have definitely taken a little more to that. But I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's a pain to write things also. So I don't know. But nowadays, I've taken to golf quite a lot nowadays. So I wish I'd gotten into the game a little earlier. So I wish I would have, if I'd gotten into the game a lot earlier, I would have probably taken to golf, at least professionally or semi-professionally. But I don't know. That's a hypothetical world. Not sure. That's probably one of these two things.
Okay, great. Okay, so now about your books. You have written 2 books. One is PCI Compliance, a definitive guide, and the other one is Secure Java for web application development. Which was more fun writing? I know both would be like your babies and things like that, but we want to know which was more fun writing, and essentially what would you suggest aspiring authors particularly in InfoSec. There are many of us in the industry who want to write today, may not have the time, but do definitely have the experiences that or practical experiences to share with the industry. What would you suggest these authors?
Sure. So both those books, so Secure Java, I wrote with my mentor, Dr. B.V. Kumar, and PCI Compliance, I wrote alone, which was just me. Obviously, PCI Compliance was a much harder effort because it was just me, and I had just started V45 then. So I was always against the clock trying to get that book done. So the more fun experience was definitely Secure Java because I got to collaborate with somebody I admired and respected, and it was a lot of fun. And we released that book in Java 1 together. We spoke about it in Java 1 together. We had a lot of fun there as well. So I would say that, yeah, that was definitely the more fun experience. PCI Compliance was a tough experience. It was because I had to write the book alone. I was entirely, although PCI Compliance has gotten a lot more, I think, people who have actually learned PCI from it. I get a lot of mail from people who say that, you know what, I was able to implement this in my company, all thanks to your book and all that. So from that standpoint, it was very satisfying, but it was not a very fun experience, that book. Now, coming to the second part of your question, which is aspiring authors and what they should do, especially when they don't have time. Now, today I've come to see content as a very different thing from books. And the reason I don't write books, I don't want to write any more books, is just that I see content as a very asynchronous vehicle today. I don't see, for instance, just to give you an idea about policy as code, there's almost no book that covers policy as code. If you want a book, there is no book. You have to follow the right Twitter accounts and you get a lot of information about it. So for me, I think the way I create content today is much more fun for me and much more rewarding for me, both financially, reputationally, whatever you have it. For instance, what you are doing with Breakpoint is, I would say, is great simply because it's asynchronous. You can do it when you have time. You can take a back sheet when you don't, when you're loaded with work. There are options out. When you are writing a book, it's like a race against time. And if you have an external publisher, they are obviously going to put their pressure on you. And at the end of the day, yes, a book definitely has this aura to it. But let me tell you that the kind of content that I've seen coming out of security industry just on Twitter has been amazing. YouTube has been amazing. I always encourage people to do asynchronous content. But if you still want to write a book, then maybe start with asynchronous content first, and then take a bunch of that asynchronous content and put it into a book. So I would say do that, because it's hard to start writing a book because there are editing issues, there is originality issues, there are content size issues. I remember the first day Secure Java was the first book I wrote. And when I sat in front of my laptop to write it, the first page of that book, I literally wrote 4 words and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I taken this up? And why on earth have I got into this position that I'm going to completely fail? Because I didn't know what to write. I was just stuck. And it took me a while to get past that process. If I was doing what I do now, which is do a lot of stuff on Twitter, a lot of stuff on YouTube, AppSec engineer, I do a lot of online courses for as well. So if I was doing that, I think any other process would have made it much faster because I had those asynchronous processes of creating content. So I would say, yeah, even if you're an author, you want to be an author, you want to have a book real bad. I personally am not a big fan of writing books anymore. But if you do want to write a book, then I would say start with asynchronous content, take the best of the asynchronous content, compile that into a book, because that would be, an easier way to go about it.
Yeah, like in a way you're putting in these building blocks and then you structure them eventually. You don't maybe need that motivation going because that you need for a book, right? That can be a long process for many of us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
but
less scary. It's less scary when you do it this way.
less scary. Actually, just as a joke, not to offend anyone, I think when you said PCI, not PCI, and Java, I was already expecting that because of compliance and risk being covered in PCI. But yeah, I'll not crack those jokes. One next episode would be on compliance itself. So.
No, I understand. Yeah, no, it had nothing to do with the subject matter. PCI was fun because
Yeah,
end
yeah.
of the day, end of the day, even compliance. PCI, the good thing with PCI is unlike a lot of compliances, it is still very prescriptive and very technical. So it's good. So it was okay. But Java is just because I had a co-author, and that man had already written like 4 books and stuff. So it was like, you know what, I know this, I'm going to teach you, and let me help you figure it out. So that was helpful. But PCI was a slog, and I just started my company, and I was working all the time, and then I had to write this book. I was like, oh, why did I take this up?
I might as well do a QSA rather
Yeah,
than writing the book.
I haven't done it, so yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks for answering all these questions, Abhay.
No worries. The pleasure is mine.